librarians. Welcome to episode 264 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 17th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast does something for you. Before we get started, let's hear from Patrick Taylor.
Hello, School Librarians United listeners. My name is Patrick Taylor, and I am the District Librarian for East Point Community Schools in East Point, Michigan. I have been on the podcast 2 times now, once in 2020, titled A Balancing Act, where Amy and I discuss working full-time in a school librarian placement while completing the Master of Library and Information Science degree. The second was almost 1 year later exactly, maybe 2 weeks off or something like that. And it's called Jack of All Trades, where Amy and I talk about the many hats that I wear in my district. My favorite tactic for getting teachers to collaborate, and I suppose there's actually a few, but I'm going to talk about 2 in particular. One is that I have created a sort of menu of services that I can offer at any grade level. And I have that included in our monthly all-staff newsletter that gets sent out from our marketing and communications coordinator. The other favorite tactic, and it's a little unconventional, is to, I don't want to say force it, but one thing that's been really successful for me this year in particular is that at our upper elementary schools, library is not a class in the specials rotation. However, they do come weekly, each class, for a routine book checkout. And so when they're in there, I just teach. I just start teaching a lesson. And it's been a really effective way to remind my fellow colleagues that I, too, am a certified teacher, and I am capable of enhancing and substantiating their instruction or anything that I think might be useful to our students. So, enjoy this week's episode.
Friends, I hope you consider sending in your voice messages to schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. Your recording will be included in the very next episode. Visit today's show notes for 24 prompts and the instructions for submitting your voice messages on the show. Amanda Jones's upcoming book, That Librarian, will be available starting on August 27th, but you can pre-order your copy now. And if you use the indie bookseller Cavalier House Books in Amanda's hometown of Denham Springs, Louisiana, you will get a signed copy. I've included a link in the show notes. When you look at the cover of Amanda's book, you might recognize the Freedom Fighters shirt that she's wearing. She reached out to the designer, Christy, who then designed a line of That Librarian apparel, as well as That Librarian flair, such as a bag, sticker, and mug. I love that we can all be that librarian who advocates for our library and our students' access to books. You will find a link to the online store in today's show notes. Know that 15% of the proceeds go to the Texas Library Association, as that is the home state of the designer. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at @LMS_United. On Threads, you can find me at School Librarians United and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Be sure to listen to episode 224. I announce a sponsorship with Literati Book Fairs. And now is a chance to hear from one of Literati's team members, Michael.
Michael Murata, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, you're part of this Literati team. Would you let us know what is your role as the book fair support team lead at Literati?
Sure. Yeah. As the team lead of our support team, I work with our support agents on a daily basis. They're the ones that are really in contact with our customers, customer facing 24/7 for us. Basically, we're there during the book fair week to be there for our customers, for our librarians to reach out to us with any questions that they might have during the book fair.
As you well know, Michael, when librarians are hosting book fairs, they're also doing like 17 other things as well, including their jobs. And fundraising tends to be something that we sort of squeeze in there out of necessity. Can you tell us, what does Literati do? And particularly you, I mean, you're probably more aware of what's going on with the librarian during their book fair. But tell us, how are you helping the school librarians during their book fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're available. Our support team is available via phone and email throughout their book fair week. They're able to reach out to us with any questions, anything that might come up during that book fair. Leading up to the book fair, they'll communicate with their account manager assigned from Literati that will help them prepare for the book fair as it gets closer. Once that book fair week starts, our support team is that main source of contact for anything our customers might need.
Fantastic. I know that I always go into panic mode, especially when I'm trying to multitask. And so knowing that Literati is there and ready to help throughout the fair is really helpful. I hope you plan on joining us and giving us a little better understanding of all the things that you do for Literati in a future episode.
That would be amazing.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thanks, Amy.
Friends, be sure to tune in to learn all about Literati and their very generous offer. Librarians who book their very first Literati Book Fair and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card to Titlewave. Visit the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team to see if you qualify. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I'm so excited to be working with them. I'm also grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 6. They're offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for today's episode, Reimagining Makerspaces, and my conversation with Kate Hebert.
Kate Hebert, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, friends, I am so excited to be having this conversation with Kate. You know, you're a school librarian in Texas. I got to tell you, we're all a little worried about the school librarians in Texas. How are you doing?
Well, it's good to be asked. I personally am doing very well. We do have some struggles on our hands in Texas. We all know this. But I will say that the support from librarians around the country, this internal support is strong. We have some really great leadership. I personally am very, very lucky, and I'm in a very unique situation. So my superintendent in my district, which is a district of about 26,000 students, we are about 20 miles outside of Houston. So we're kind of in a suburban/rural area. Our superintendent is a former librarian.
That's a win.
It absolutely is. And so before she went into administration, she was a librarian. And we are so lucky to have a school board who supports us and a community that supports us. And we were actually recognized at a school board meeting, the elementary librarians. There are 20 of us now, 19 of us now, and we were recognized for a reading initiative that we did in our district at a school board meeting. So we feel very blessed to be in the situation that we are in, but we are also very aware of the fact that not everyone has that support. And so we do what we can to advocate from the inside out to show how powerful a strong library community can be.
And, it's awfully good to hear some really celebratory news coming out of Texas. And I never have I ever, podcast first, met anybody who's been as fortunate as you are to work with an administration who can say, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's what a wonderful opportunity. I'm officially jealous. All right. So, Kate, give us some context because first of all, everybody knows in Texas, things are a lot bigger. You've mentioned that there are at least 19 elementary librarians. Dare I ask, do you know offhand how many middle school and high school librarians you have in your district?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to mess it up and they're going to be mad at me. We have, I'm counting people in our last meeting. We have, I think we're up to 8 junior highs and 4 high schools. So we're a pretty robust district. And we started as a very rural district and it has just blown up. And it's definitely been interesting to watch the growth. I'm the elementary lead librarian, so I took that position a couple years ago. And one of the things that I really work with my new librarian is how do you support your school? Because our campuses are very diverse. We have some that are truly rural. We have some that are suburban. Some of our campuses are 15 minutes from downtown Houston. So we have to support our campuses differently, and that's something that we work really hard to focus on our kids, what our kids need.
I have to ask because the term lead librarian implies that there's more than one of you in the district. Now, as the district's one and only librarian, I guess that makes me the lead librarian, but it's just the fact is we've got other people who occupy, my counterparts in the other schools are not librarians. And so I have to ask, this title that you have, lead librarian, is it akin to like a department chair where you would have it in addition to your responsibilities? Because you oversee a library space, do you not?
Yes. I am in a pre-K through 5 campus of about 430 students. And so, yes, then my position is a support for the elementary librarian. I'm their person that they can come to with questions. So whether it's managerial or if they're having an issue. I did have a librarian last week who sent me an email. She said, hey, I'm being told for testing the week before book fair. What should I say? What should I do? And so we worked it through and we were able to kind of help support her in that. So it's in addition to my librarian role. And then we have a junior high and high school lead librarian as well.
I love that. When I talk to many people on the show, so often they say, it's lonely. It's a lonely job because, there's only one of us. But, even in it sounds like in your districts, even though you only have one librarian per building, you still have a very supportive network of librarians who all can, be that type of, team, albeit sort of in different buildings, but you have that company of librarians working together. For so many of us are like me, it's like, yeah, no, that's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Hey, listen, everything's bigger in Texas, including our district.
Well, and what a district too, to be able to work for a school librarian, and that's outstanding. All right. So Kate, can I ask, in your space, are you on a flexible schedule, a fixed schedule, a hybrid schedule?
I have always done a fixed schedule. This is a new campus for me. And so it's the first year. I had been on my previous campus for 4 years and then another campus before that for a year. So this is my 6th year. And I think I did that math right. I took advantage of the fact that we're opening a little bit smaller. So we were projected to open at 350. We're currently about 430. So I am so lucky, and I was very intentional. I get to see every single student every week. I can't imagine a more powerful opportunity to start off at the ground floor with the library as an absolutely integral part of the school. And I do a couple things. I want the teachers to like me. And I want the teachers to see me as a resource not only for them, but for their students. And one of the ways that I do that, which is a little unusual, is my teachers do not stay with their classes when they come to the library. And here's why. 1, it gives them a break. to use the restroom, to make copies, to do all those things that they don't have time to do. 2, I was a classroom teacher. I've got the classroom management under control, and I have a different relationship with these students. I want them to feel safe and comfortable. I don't want them to bring any baggage with them. If they're having a tough day in class, let's take a break from that. And then I've also found it helps the students be more independent when it's time to select books. They're not running to their teacher. They're not trying to impress their teacher. They're picking the books that they really want to read.
Wow. So you're not providing release time for the teacher? Or are you? I mean, contractually. So when I taught elementary, I got a little wave. The teachers dropped the kids off. I was providing them with their prep time that day.
So this is separate from their conference or their prep time. And what I do when I'm doing my library talk at the beginning of the year when we're doing our professional development, I kind of give them a little bit of perimeters. I'll say, this is a great time to go pull your guided reading materials. This is a great time to prep. So they do not take advantage. They usually come back right away. I mean, they appreciate the time. But no, who gets 30 minutes in their week given to them ever? No one. So if I can do that, and it also benefits me and the students, why not?
Well, and I can see the advantages right away, because you're right. If that teacher is there, then sometimes there might be almost a question as to who do the students go to for help. And no, I can absolutely see where that would be. I could see absolutely your point, but on the flip side, I think you're being incredibly generous to your teachers. I'm going to say that because I hope at some point your superintendent does listen to our conversation. So, wow.
Well, that being said, the only reason I can do it is because I have a full-time paraprofessional with me. So there are 2 of us in the library at all times. And anytime that comes up as a question, I tell people, come spend a day. My library is big and beautiful and open. I cannot monitor a class, help students find books, and check out books all at the same time. I'm good. I'm not 3 people at once good. So we are very lucky.
And you know what? And you know you're lucky. I mean, and that's important because not everybody realizes that.
Oh, no, I do. I absolutely do. So if I can take that and pass that on to the teachers, my teachers are amazing and work very hard. I'm happy to do that.
Well, you'd win a lot of friends here. So, I am so grateful you're here today. We're talking about rethinking our makerspaces. You mentioned that you've been a librarian now for 6 years. How many of those years were you overseeing a makerspace?
So I've had a makerspace every year, but I inherited a makerspace my first year, and it was used as sort of a reward system. So if students were doing really well, they could earn bucks or whatever. And if they had a certain number of bucks, or if they did a certain reading incentive program, they could have time doing makers. That didn't necessarily gel with what I saw the benefit being. So the first year that I took over, we started incorporating some more makerspaces into our everyday library routine. Then we opened a brand new campus, and it was a STEM certified campus, and it was certified by NISE. And it was the second elementary school in Texas to open as a STEM certified campus. And with that came a ton of resources, a ton of information, and then professional development for me as well. So it really changed everything for me. And I learned about Makerspace from a practitioner's point of view. I became certified in 2020, and the professional development that I went through at that really changed everything for me. Because before I had an interest, I had a curiosity, but I didn't really have a ton of information. I was just kind of winging it. Like, yeah, we had some Legos. We had a marble race. We had lots of duct tape. But what are we doing with it? So that for me has changed quite a bit. So after that, I moved to a new campus this year, and we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. So I spent 4 years with resources, writing grants, getting all of these cool toys. So then this year it became, okay, wait, what do I really want my makerspace to be? And how can I be intentional about what I'm asking for and how I'm spending my time? So I've gone through quite a roller coaster with my makerspaces over the years. Lots of learning on the fly.
And can I just say, the way I'm hearing this, while it's lovely to have and inherit a makerspace program, the downside, of course, is you have things that somebody else purchased, and you are now strapped with a program which has already been started. And in order to justify going in a different direction, you now have to ask for money. But if you land in a situation like you are right now, where you have nothing, then I guess you're creating something that is going to embody that which you find most valuable for your students.
For sure. And it's been a learning experience, kind of starting from scratch. I'm very lucky. My administrator actually came to me and she said, we don't have a technology teacher, because some of our campuses actually have technologies as part of our specials rotation. So some of our campuses have art, music, PE, and technology. So our kids are getting that weekly, which is amazing. My prior campus had that, and this campus doesn't. So she was the one that came to me and my principal and said, what can we do? What can we do? And I said, I got it. Don't worry, because I'm not going to turn that down. And then I had to figure out what I was going to do. I'm really good at saying yes and figuring it out. Yeah.
Wow. Well, but did you have some latitude? I mean, it sounds like you had some direction and some things that you wanted to achieve in the space that you were going to oversee.
Yeah, I did. And because I did have 5 years of experience with makerspaces at this point, I had been able to kind of go through phases where, like I said, at first it was kind of used as a reward. And then when I went to the STEM certified campus, it became about the STEM. So it was truly introducing kids to the engineering design process. And it was introducing them to coding and all of these very tech-heavy things. But from observation and from my connections with the students facilitating these, what I see as the biggest benefit are those soft skills. Collaborating, problem solving, critical thinking, digital citizenship. All of those things come into play. Number one, understanding that failure is a step forward. If you can get an 8-year-old to accept what they designed and built failed, and it's a good thing, that kid is decades ahead of adults.
So we had a makerspace, and I'll never forget, there was a poster hanging in the makerspace in my last school, and it said, fail, first attempt in learning. And it was like, oh, that's, and this is part of this is about teaching grit. And I remember we have to teach the kids how, they can struggle in a situation safely. This isn't about crossing the street. This is about learning how to not quit when you get frustrated and teaching them to have that grit. And it helps them, move progressively to more and more challenging things because they're not going to give up the first time they hit a roadblock. And so I absolutely love that about being something that can be interwoven into a lesson that they have in the makerspace. And I love the intentionality when you can create a reason why working in a makerspace is going to be valuable. It's play with purpose. And so I love that about what a makerspace can be, instead of just hey, this is a reward.
Absolutely. And we do an introductory lesson that I've actually shared and should be in the show notes. And one of the things we talk about is, what is a makerspace? What do we do in a makerspace? What does it look like? What does it sound like? And then we end with the magnificent yet, which is a story all about growth mindset. And that's truly what I'm teaching. Other people might be teaching coding. God bless them. Other people might be teaching robotics, or might be teaching these people who are going to create amazing things. I tend to be teaching a mindset, and I tend to be teaching resiliency, because a lot of our kids struggle with that. And so if I can help them see trying and trying and trying and trying and not giving up as something that's going to benefit them, why not? Why not spend my time like that?
So I do have to ask, when you have Makerspace, is that built into the visit to the library? Or is that done at a different time? I imagine with a school as big as yours, this is coupled with your book checkout, or how does that work in your schedule?
It is a little bit unusual. So again, my administrator came to me and said, we have something that we're going to do with our teachers. And our teachers each week are going to get an extra 40 minutes of planning RTI time with their team and with the administrators and with the coaches. So outside of their conference, I know. So can you imagine?
Can I just ask?
I know. I know.
Would you mind sharing the name of your district? Because right now there are people who are packing up and moving to work in your district, because this sounds like a dream. Are you kidding me?
So there's a reason that I drive 40 minutes to work each way. I worked in a district closer to home, and good district, big district. And I had some coworkers who said to me, you need to go to Alvin. It's Alvin ISD, home of Nolan Ryan. And they told me, you have an Alvin heart. And I said, okay, I don't know what that means. But again, I told you, it started from a very small rural district, and it still has that heart. It is truly all about the kids and what's best for the kids and what's best for the teachers. So our teachers get 40 minutes a week to meet with their team, meet with administrators, meet with coaches, and they have very specific things that they're working on. So they do some professional development. They do some data analysis. They do a lot. That's when they take time to find to group their kids and do different things and just share ideas. And so during that time, I was given the opportunity to plan what the students are doing during that time. So, and forgive me, anyone listening, that's a Makerspace purist, when I speak about Makerspace, I tend to combine technology and Makerspace, because that's what I'm programming. So we have 3 rotating lessons, but I was given a blank canvas. And so I thought, what can I do? What can I expose our students to that will be the most beneficial to them? What do they really actually need? And so the things I came up with were coding, typing, and Makerspace. And so that's what our students rotate through. So they get one of those lessons every week.
One of my elementary positions, so we had a 6-day rotation, and for 3 days I was the librarian, and for 3 days I was the technology teacher. And it blended beautifully, because by the time I'd done 3 days, I was ready to do something else. It was the same rotation, but I served 2 different roles, and I loved it. And but I got to tell you, keyboarding was absolutely vital. And I taught them as early as 5 years old. And I got to tell you, those kids were really catching on. I was in that position for 7 years, and I absolutely loved it, because sometimes the most satisfying thing is to watch these little kids recognize that they can do things so much faster on a keyboard if they learn how to keyboard. And it was one of the things I was sure they would still be doing 20 years from that. It's like, okay, I think you're still going to be doing this. I don't know about anything else we do, but, you're still going to be able to use a keyboard. And that's not true of many of the students I work with today.
Absolutely. And to me, it was an obvious need. More and more, we're asking our students to do things with technology and type and all these things, but are we teaching them to type? A lot of times, no. And so you're going to have these kids that are, poking one key at a time. Why not teach them that? Why not teach them? I can't imagine a more real world application in a school. Like you were saying, we know that they're going to be doing this in the future. Are they going to be worrying about ratios? Sorry, math, but...
But, when you think about like standardized tests, now we all have standardized tests and our kids have all now migrated to standardized tests, which are completely done on a computer. And even just that rudimentary, like familiarity with a standard QWERTY keyboard is going to benefit them tremendously because it's one less stressor when they're sitting in that testing situation. Wow, I hadn't even thought about that, but now that you mention it, it's like, oh my gosh. With technology playing such a big part of a student's day-to-day life, is teaching technology and offering makerspace activities still as needed and relevant as it was in the past?
So I think just continuing with what we were saying, yes, absolutely. I would argue it's even more important now. Our students have constant exposure to new technology, but no one is teaching them how to use it. So typing skills, coding skills, research skills, critical thinking, it's so important. It is so important because we think, oh, they're digital natives. I've heard that as long as I've been educated. They're digital natives. They'll teach you. Absolutely, they will. You still have to teach them to understand what they're doing. If a student is looking for something, they're researching something, and they don't know how to really search in Google, they're not going to get what they need. You still have to teach them those skills. And then as they move into adulthood, there's going to be an expectation that they have knowledge in these areas, that they know how to type, that they understand some basic STEM-related things, that they know what coding is. Let me just say, if you are listening and you're an elementary librarian and you are scared of coding, your kids already know how to do it. You just have to give them the opportunity.
In so many cases, we have the opportunity to implement some of these programs, even sort of, just sort of dipping our toe in and doing this, because not everybody works in the space with a dedicated makerspace. And so, oftentimes it takes the initiative of a school librarian to say, you know what, I would like to work into, sort of create this space. And, like all things, it takes time, it takes money. And sometimes we have to be patient. But, a lot of times the willingness on the part of the librarian is absolutely vital. As an elementary librarian, how has having a makerspace been integrated into your larger offerings to your teachers and students across the grade levels that you serve?
So I do have, even though I am doing the programming for the weekly lessons, we do also have special occasion makerspaces in the library. We try to do like a monthly event where they're creating something, and that can be as simple as they're learning how to make snowflakes, and we're learning about snow, or they're challenged with, building a bridge or things like that. So we do try. I would love to do more. So for me, when I came into Makerspace and I started creating my own programming, again, I didn't have a ton of experience, but I knew the lessons I had done that were successful. And so one of the things that I do is I tie literacy, which is my wheelhouse, this is what I'm comfortable with, in art, to what I'm doing. So what I almost always do with my Makerspace lessons, they almost always include a book. So the reason I do that is it's a way of creating a shared experience. So if you start with a story, one of my favorites is the series by Andrea Beatty, Rosie Revere, Ada Swiss Scientist, Iggy Peck. If you read Iggy Peck Architect with a group of third graders, and then you ask them to build a bridge and get a little Sour Patch Kid from one side of the bridge to the other, they get it because they just read a story where that happened. So we are by nature storytellers. So if we can link some of those challenges and concepts and critical thinking to something they've experienced together, they're more likely to collaborate and they get it. They have a framework for what they're talking about.
I know we're going to talk about some storybook connections in just a minute. And it brought me back to a lesson I absolutely loved. We had a very sort of basic, sort of small makerspace when I was teaching elementary. And my favorite literary connection was 21 Elephants and Still Standing by April Jones Prince. And this is not a new book. This came out in 2005. But it was this idea that when the Brooklyn Bridge was built, that P.T. Barnum came to, sort of help people feel more confident about crossing the bridge. There was a lot of concerns. And so, 14 years of building this bridge and people were really worried about it, holding up. So he marched his 21 elephants across the Brooklyn Bridge. So our Makerspace connection is building a bridge. And then I had gone to my son. He had a 3D printer. And I said, I need you to make me some really low poly, little itty bitty elephants. And they have to be about, I'm about 1.5 inches high. You're going to have to get your elephants across the bridge. Well, if anybody's watching The Gilded Age on TV, they haven't had the elephants, but they are building the Brooklyn Bridge. And there's a really cool other also tie-in, friends. I'm just going to say this because there is a woman engineer, the wife of the engineer that oversaw the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. It was actually completed by his wife. So there are some fantastic books, friends. I'll put those links in the show notes, okay? But speaking of show notes, you do not want to miss Kate's show notes because she went over the top. And I do want to ask you, because we're talking about storybooks, can you mention this gift that you've included in your show notes? You included an entire presentation in there about the literary connection with your makerspace.
Again, I think for a lot of elementary librarians, they're either kind of asked to do this. They don't have a lot of comfort or a lot of familiarity with Makerspace. And I had that same experience coming in. So I thought, what am I comfortable with? And then again, what had I seen work with the kids? And so for me, it's pairing the Makerspace activities with children's literature. And I was actually able to create a grant and fund that. And so one of the things I did is I went through each grade level and picked one book. So for my pre-payer, there was a book a few years ago called Gears, Gears, Gears. And there was a robot on the front and he had gears in his belly. And as you turned the pages, you got to see how the gears connected. And so the students read that. And then they had some gears that the challenge, what they were supposed to do was make this one blue gear turn. And that was it. Because they're 4, they're 5. It doesn't need to be over the top to be effective. And so that was something I was able to share at a conference a couple years ago. And so each grade level had a different book paired with a Makerspace activity.
Anytime school librarians share this, it's really just a shopping list, right? It's a shopping list because now I'm going to take what the links in your show notes, I'm going to create my shopping list. And it really is an opportunity for you. We trust each other because when you're talking to other school librarians, we know the kind of work and research, and you did your homework when you wrote that presentation, and then you so generously shared it with us. I'm really grateful. Are your STEM-inspired picture books shelved in your Makerspace, or are they in some way labeled so that students and staff can locate them in your larger collection?
So right now they're in the larger collection. It is a goal for next year. This year was just survival and getting up and running, but I do want to make sure that I have the material and the book that teachers can use in their classroom, because that is one thing that that's the transition I haven't made yet. But how cool would it be to have a kit ready to go with the book, with instructions, with the material that a teacher could just grab and pull into their classroom as needed. Right now, it is just something that we're using, but I do have copies of the book in the collection. And what's funny is every time we use a book in a makerspace, there is a hold list for that book. The kids can't wait to come check it out, and they'll check out other books that are similar. So it really does inspire. It's a very nice relationship we have with the librarian with Makerspace.
I love this idea of sort of a grab and go, or, these kits. And we've all worked with teachers with very different personalities. And we have those teachers who really are just most comfortable in their space. And the kits would definitely speak to that type of teacher who, wants to be on board, but is really much more at ease when they get to teach and work with their students in their own space. What you do sounds amazing. Do you have, when it comes to funding your makerspace, is there a different budget for your books than there is for your makerspace? Are you sort of given a larger budget and it's up to you to decide how it is spent? I'm curious.
From August to February, my makerspace budget was $0. I have been doing this all with a lot of creativity and a lot of asking for support. And I've been lucky to have support. And in the past, I've used Education Foundation grants. Our district has been able to give us money each year, a little bit of money based on our current enrollment. I did get some money this year. So the last 2 weeks, the kids have been creating. Last week, we did an animal makerspace where they had to watch an animal problem solve, and then they had to use the materials to problem solve. So that was a fun tie-in. But that was the first time we had been able to bust out the good fun magnet tiles and bristle blocks and more manipulative things like that. But honestly, I liked being on a $0 budget. It made me be creative. It made me reach out to the community, which is something that I am lucky to have support. But I did have our PTO. I put a flyer together, and I actually put the flyer in our show notes because I had to decide, what do I need? What do I actually need? And what can I ask people to donate? And so it became more about what am I actually going to use? And so then that was how I started.
Fantastic. Well, and I know that we're awfully creative, but at the end of the day, there are some things which, are investments, and then there are some consumables where you have to recognize when you run a makerspace and you have consumables, things that you will run out of. At some point, that magic wand, you do need to recognize how those types of things are going to be replaced. I did see a great conversation on social media about something about how, never buy Legos. Never buy Legos, because there's always somebody who's ready to move those out of their home. I imagine that the Facebook swap has always been a good place for Makerspace to get some of those toys that people are moving on. But again, this is about being clever and judicious with how you spend your money. Kate, when it comes to securing funding for your makerspace, I'm sure you've got some goals. I know that you probably have some things that are larger ticket items, that obviously we're not going to be able to fund on the swap or on Facebook. How have you thought about moving forward and some of those larger acquisitions for your makerspace?
So one of the things that I would really love to bring to my campus would be robotics. On the STEM side, our district has some robotics teams and things like that. So I have looked at corporate grants. I have written to we are in a neighborhood, and I actually wrote a letter to our HOA there because they have a school fund And so I've asked for money there. Our education foundation is wonderful. And I will, every year I apply for at least a grant or two. And then campus, the community asking for donations and things like that. Even if a person doesn't have a ton to donate, like you said, you can get Legos, you can get Connect, you can get toilet paper rolls. So you just have to be willing to look a little bit and ask. And worst case scenario, you don't get it, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So one, corporations is a big one for me, is to reach out to different corporations because some of them have funds that you don't even know about. So network, talk to your parents. That's a big one for me. Ask the parents, do you know a company? Does your company do any sort of educational support? And it can't hurt to ask. So just get out there and write those grants.
We've already talked about how great it is to work for a superintendent who is a former school librarian, but how do you remind your administration of the value that this makerspace brings to your school community?
So I'm very lucky, again, to have a principal who came to me with how can we best use this time? But I have been in positions and I have had questions from others about using that time and how we're using that time and is it beneficial? So in general, if faced with pushback in education, bring the data. Look at your why. So why are we doing this? Well, here's the thing. Makerspace is still relatively new, and there's not a ton of research on how it benefits students. But why we are doing this goes back to the National Research Council back in as far as 2009, saying our kids are behind when it comes to STEM. How can we teach them inquiry? How can we get them up to date on technology? And how can we teach those 21st century skills? And so for me, the makerspace is just the ideal way of doing that. And so you can talk about those things. You can talk about anecdotally what you've seen with kids. And then you can also give them numbers. So this is what I did for my campus this year. This year, my students have had at 40 minutes a week. By the end of the year, they'll have had 35 sessions, over 1,400 minutes of either technology or makerspace. That's 23 hours of direct technology instruction and usage, and over 7 hours on each skill, coding, typing, and makerspace. That's more than just exposure.
Well, and again, it's planful. I think that the concern, I know because the makerspace in my library was sort of adjacent. It was in a room that was just off to the side. And I could hear some of the comments when this was new. And it really was that this is just playtime. And, the teachers were grateful because it was release time. So the teachers didn't argue because they were excited that that's when they were going to go and get their prep. But the consensus was this is just playtime. And I think if done well, like you said, you're talking about those soft skills that are being built. And this doesn't happen overnight. You don't teach these things one and done. You're sort of building on them gradually, year after year, session after session. You've got a plan, and you've got a whole curriculum here.
And here's why librarians are uniquely capable to facilitate makerspace. We know what it means to have to advocate for what we do, because not everyone understands what we do. So just like with the library, you have to advocate for your makerspace. So you post those pictures. You talk about the things that the kids are doing. You find that community support so that people gain the understanding for what you're doing. And slowly, I think you make some changes and you see, which, let me backtrack. Is it horrible for kids to play? Is that a bad thing to have in their day? If all they're doing is stacking toilet paper rolls to see who can make the highest tower, isn't that a good thing?
Communication.
So let's have that argument too.
They have to work as a team. I think this is, working as a team for a shared goal. Not everybody plays well with others. And that could be said of my older students too. In order to learn how to work together as a team, again, this isn't something that just happens in kids. They have to learn how to, that requires practice. So no.
And how many of us don't use those skills on a daily basis? We all do. We all collaborate. We all communicate. We all have to learn how to take an idea, make a compromise, try again. All of those things that they're learning in Makerspace, we do all the time if we're lucky. This is a little off, but when I started teaching and I learned about how to teach kids how to talk in class, how to say, I agree with so-and-so. I want to add. That's not something I was taught. That was something I learned as an adult through trial and error. How do you communicate effectively with people? So teaching kids how to talk accountably in the classroom is the skill that we're setting them up for success in any career. And so I think Makerspace falls right in with that. You are setting them up to be successful no matter what they do after school.
Well, and now that we talk about this more, I'm thinking about other skills like listening. What about listening skills? And following directions or making a plan. These are things which, if you don't give them those opportunities, and when you think about like what you're asking kids to do, there is value in everything that you do in a makerspace. But what to other people, to onlookers, they may not see those skills. But once you start articulating which skills are being honed, it makes all the sense in the world.
And so you have to advocate. You have to advocate and you have to explain and you have to talk. And, teaching is a performance and being a librarian is a performance. And you have to extend that to your community. Let your teachers know why you're doing what you do. And I will make a plug here for having a strong library curriculum. This is actually something that I'm going to be presenting at TLA with a couple of my district librarians. And we created a curriculum for the library. It integrates our technology standards. It integrates Makerspace ideas. And we used our district scope and sequence to do our curriculum. So let's say first grade is studying fairy tales. Guess what? I have a Makerspace for that. You got 3 little pigs? Let's build some houses. And so that's just a way that we can reach out to the classroom teachers and bring them into what we're doing and show them how what we're doing supports what you're doing. We're all working together to help kids. And there are kids who will light up in Makerspace where they don't light up anywhere else in the building.
Well, and I'm sure that you have a grateful staff who now have come to expect that you are teaching certain, benchmarks because it alleviates the expectation that this is entirely in the sort of up to the teachers, the grade level teachers and the subject level, matter teachers to teach these things. If they can count on the librarian to take on some of those, responsibilities in terms of reaching some of those benchmarks, all of a sudden your value to them is one of a partner in learning.
And it also gives us, it's just another way that we can advocate for ourselves and say, if they want to pull us for testing, you can say, that's fine. This is the teach that I'm covering for second grade that day. So if we want to lose that instruction, that's okay, but this is what we're doing. And that is one thing with the new campus that I am absolutely still working on, is building that collaboration with teachers But at my former campus, I had a third grade teacher who called me regularly and would say, do you have an extra day to cover fiction and nonfiction? And I would say, yeah, I'm working on a lesson for next week. And she would say, my lesson got short. I have 5 kids that still can't tell me the difference between fiction and nonfiction. Can you hit it hard for me? And I'd say, yeah, absolutely. I got you.
That's amazing. I know there are a lot of people who absolutely hate X, but that's where you and I actually first met. And you had posted something. Thank you for reminding me that. So, friends, this is our origin story. This is how things all start to come together. Oftentimes with I see something on social media and I say, actually, let's talk about this, because what you shared was about having a virtual makerspace. And I think the question, if you and I had been, if I had seen that post in 2020, in the fall or in the winter of 2021, I would have said, of course you have a virtual makerspace because we're learning in hybrid or we're learning, virtually. During the pandemic, everything was virtual. But are you telling me you still have a virtual makerspace?
I do. It did start in the pandemic. It did. We wanted students to still have options to be creative. You lose some of the collaboration, you lose some of it. But it gave them an exposure to some of the concepts, some of the language, some of the projects. So it did start with that. But again, I'm starting from scratch this year. I don't have a big budget. So I didn't always have a hands-on activity for kids, as much as that broke my heart. So I said, I'm going to pull out that virtual makerspace and I'm going to update it. Here's how I knew it was a hit. I had students coming to me and saying, I did the make a musical instrument on the virtual makerspace, and it was so fun. And I had kids after winter break telling me, oh, I was practicing my coding on our virtual makerspace. And I do use it in the library. If students are done, they've checked out their books, they don't really want to read, I have a couple laptops, I say, go ahead, hop on your virtual makerspace, find something to do. And I have it separated. So it's pre-K through 2, 3rd through 5th. And it's been, I just update it, and it is, we have a one sign-in where the students sign into everything, and we just added the link so they have access to it all the time. Hopefully they're not using it when they're not supposed to be. But they absolutely love it. And it's a great thing if you don't have the budget.
Wow. So give us an idea of some of the things you've linked in the show notes, because again, at the end of the day, listeners have come to rely on guests to be generous with the resources which they have put together. Work smarter, not harder. I trust my guests implicitly because as librarians, I know the kinds of things that we are generating and sharing with our students, and then again, passing along to other school librarians, so we can learn from one another. So give us an idea of some of the things that you have shared in your show notes.
I do have my virtual makerspace that I've shared that you can look at and use. And I will say, with my virtual makerspace, I beg, borrow, and steal these resources from other librarians. There's lots of people who post monthly boards. Shannon Miller is always a rock star with things like that. Other district librarians, I pulled from them. What are you doing? What works? What doesn't work? So that's something that I've shared. I shared it's called Books and Bots, because I love a little cute alliteration. And that's my pairing literature with Makerspace. When we were working on our STEM curriculum, we created theme related picture books. I have a Makerspace planning sheet in there. I tried to just pull some things that I thought would help whether you were new to this or you've been doing it for a while. One person I absolutely love is Dr. Tricia Kwan. She is out of UNT, University of North Texas, and she has a book about using books in Makerspace, which I love, but she also has an amazing website with Makerspace resources. So I kind of just threw a lot of things in there, the engineering design process, just some things that if you want to start thinking about the intentionality of your makerspace. Like, what are you introducing them to? What do you want them to take away as they move forward? I put in some things like that. And then some individual lessons. I already mentioned my love for Andrea Beatty, and I've done lessons on every single one of her books with the Makerspaces. So I threw that in. And then it's some other research that I have used in the past to support and advocate for the Makerspace.
Kate Hebert, you are an absolute joy, and I am so grateful you took time out of your busy day to share with us. Listeners would love to add you to their virtual PLN and follow you on social. Can you share with us where we can find you?
I am on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. All of my handles are Kate TX Librarian, KATETX Librarian on Instagram. I'm probably the most visible on Instagram, but I'm also on formerly Twitter. And my Gmail is the same. If there's something that's linked in the notes that someone would like actual access to, if they want it, they can email me and I would happily share anything.
Kate Hebert, you are wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and everything that you've shared with us today. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure, and I hope that it benefits even one person. And I loved our conversation. Thank you so much.
Friends, be sure to visit Kate's resources, which are linked in today's show notes. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. A couple friendly reminders, friends. Use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more. And librarians who book their very first Literati Book Fair and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card to Titlewave. Visit the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team to see if you qualify. Our next book club and book club episode is on hold, and I'll be sure to post updates as soon as Jared Amato's book, Just Read It, becomes available. I hope you will consider sending in your voice message and have your say on the next podcast episode. Visit the link in today's show notes. The topic of our next episode will be Romance Book Club and my conversation with Lori Lieberman. I hope you will tune in.